Bruce Wayne with another one of my amazing stories. So the last time I told you that I got a scholarship to go overseas to England and Scotland. But before I get into that story, I just want to digress a little bit and to talk a little bit more about men and, when we're younger and, basically dating and going to the clubs and meeting a girlfriend. And I think I also told you the story before that it seems like, that it's important that these young kids, continue to, dress up and when they go out and, dress respectable. Because I remember I told you that I went to Walmart and I saw this kid in Walmart and he looked like he rolled out of bed, his hair was not combed, looked like he didn't brush his teeth, he was in his pajamas, and he just didn't give a shit about how he looked. And so one of the things I want to point out is that this is just my own personal philosophy, but I believe that men should hunt. And I know women, you may say, oh my God, what a sexist thing. We're just not there to be sexualized and feel like some sort of object of someone's desire. That's not what I mean. I think if one can argue, I'm sure there's lots of different arguments, and I'm not going to get into the sociological thing of looking at a group of people and what that means. But what I'll say is I'm not an evolutionary biologist again, so I'm doing all the asterisks next to me. But here's what I think. I think that men would probably have been less likely to get out of the cave if it wasn't for women. Men probably would have been content in sitting in the cave, killing a wildebeest or some, antelope of that era. Okay, dragging it back to the cave, not showering, not brushing their teeth, not building a better house, and be completely content and never really evolve.
Gross!
But as like other animals in nature, if you notice that all the other birds and animals, they tend to fluff their feathers up. Some birds, the male animals are competing and jockeying for position, for dominance, etc. And I think in that sense, it's important that men also are allowed to hunt, essentially, to compete for the prize. The prize is you ladies. Yes, we compete for that. And in the process of doing that, I can picture it back then as caveman, that one caveman had a cave and it was damp and dark and musty and cold. And then another guy next door, killed some sort of a antelope and dragged it back the fur to his cave. And now he had a warmer cave over there. And so the woman is like, oh, that guy over there got a warmer cave. And so she went over to that other warmer cave. So the caveman goes, oh, well, screw that. So he goes and he kill a bigger animal and, drag, and then she goes back over in that direction. I'm not saying that women are materialistic, but I'm just saying that women are the reason why a lot of men, go out and make something of themselves. And so you can see, one guy has fire and then the other one, goes, and as you start looking at evolution, you see, okay, well, I have a house, I have a bigger house, I got a car, I got a better car, I got a boat. And so essentially you see men evolving out of the cave. In this era that we live in right now, the thing that scares me a lot is that I was reading this one thing online, and they say you should never read anything on the internet. And I was talking to a number of young kids, and they were saying to me that the new thing now is that the boys don't approach the girl. Or when you go to the club, you don't approach the girl. You just sit at the bar and you drink and you wait for the girl to approach you, because the reason why you do it is because you're terrified that you could, just coming over to say hello or buying her a drink or, try to make an approach in some way might be considered to be, sexualized and sexual harassment, the whole legal stuff that goes along with that and the whole unacceptable thing and degrading women, etc. So I'm not for any of those things. I'm not for degrading women. I'm not for sexualizing women. I'm not for those negative things. But within the context of those things, men and women have got to get together, because otherwise, if we don't get together, then guess what? There's no more human beings, because we have to reproduce and among many other things and build a community, etc. So I was saying to him, I said, so what do you mean? you just sit there and the girl come over to you to pick you up. He's like, yeah. I'm like, boy, that's boring. I said, that sort of reminds me of a lion in the jungle, a male lion in the jungle. And instead of him chasing the antelope, he just sits there and waits for the antelope to come over and lay on his plate. Now, what do you think that translation is? Now I see these boys and they're sitting at home, they're playing video games, they're not showering, they're unkept, they probably don't brush their teeth, they probably don't even hardly roll out of bed. When they want to get laid, they just swipe left on their phone, they meet some girl for some casual sex, and they go back to being caveman playing on their video games. So essentially, they're de-evolving. So it's important that we allow men to find a way to be able to pursue the prize. Ladies, to be able to find a suitable mate, to be able to learn the skill sets to treat a lady very well. Whatever that is for this particular generation, you guys need to figure that out. But you can't be scared of the opposite sex because you need each other in order to build a community, build a family, etc. So that's my 2 cents on that front. And that was part of the motivator that got me to get a job, to when I had to go to the club, buy better clothes, to better myself, to go to school, etc. So I'm just saying that this may be something you may want to consider for your sons or young men, or for ladies to consider. So you should expect more from your guy, is what I'm saying. So in any event, I started to work out, and I started working out more and more. I started doing reasonably well. I got a fairly decent amount of awards from school for different things, just from odd things, from school spirit to school leadership to being selected by the Boston Student Advisory Council. And so somehow we ended up in, I ended up in the paper and on the 6 o'clock news, because I guess they had the news that one of the things that we were talking about, one of the events that we attended, and I ended up in the news, and my friends said they saw me on the news and I was in the papers, and I think I got in the papers a couple of times. And out of that, I guess someone in my school, school leadership, as far as the adults were concerned, the principals, etc., thought that I had some talent. So they actually, first thing they did is that they sent me as a volunteer at the Channel 2 in Boston, which was Channel 2 was like an educational channel in Boston. But, we have to rewind a little bit. I may have been doing reasonably well to fit in high school and to sort of interact with all my friends, but I knew nothing about how to approach a formal organization. I didn't tell my mom about it, and I was on my way there. I didn't have any transportation to get there, and I just didn't end up going. And I think a couple of other kids later on, a year or two later, went there, and actually they ended up on TV. So, the same thing happened later on down the road in my life, where mom is busy doing what she's doing to be a mom, and I felt like not having two parents there, you can feel the impact from time to time of not having that extra guidance of, when I would see some of my friends, like my girlfriend's family, if they had an opportunity like that, they would rally around their kid, they would sit there and strategize, they'd know how to interact with the system. And I felt that I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have those tools, I didn't have that skill set. And I was actually recommended to go to MIT for these classes that I could take. And I think I went to MIT and I took, in the summer, I took alternative energy and meteorology. I went for several classes there. They were quite interesting. They brought me and the kids down to they had a nuclear reactor that was located on campus, which is kind of cool. Talk about things that you don't have in a regular school. How many people have a nuclear reactor in their school? Maybe you wouldn't want one, but if you're studying math and science and engineering, then I think that would make sense. And I remember going there for a period of time, but eventually at some point I just stopped going because no one on the outside, my family, friends, teachers, were really there to reinforce. I think that they trusted me well enough as a leader that they thought that I would just go on my own. But at some point when you're that young and you have that amount of responsibility and there's no one there beyond saying, hey, you should go over there and check that thing out, and you go and there's no accountability there, then eventually I stopped going. I kind of regretted that a little bit because it was quite interesting. I wish somebody was there to hold my hand a little bit to kind of help me through some of that. At any point, let's talk about me getting that scholarship. So at some point I was selected to, by the Experiment in International Living, of one of two students that to represent the Massachusetts to overseas. And essentially, Experiment in International Living was an organization that sent kids from all over the United States. I think 2 was picked per state. I'm not sure if that was completely true, but I think they selected kids from across the country to go overseas to various countries throughout the world to experience that. And they paid for everything from your airline ticket. They gave you spending money. They paid for your room and board, etc. It was quite damn cool. And so the first thing that I remember is in order to actually get prepared to leave the country, we all had to drive to this was a private school, kind of in the middle of nowhere in the suburbs of Boston, in the suburbs of Massachusetts somewhere. And it was a private school. It was the first time I'd actually attended a private school. And what was really weird about that was when I got there to this high school, I had never seen anything like this. These guys had, it was like a board, I think it was a boarding school. They had their own cattle. They had their own fruits and vegetables grown for them specifically. They had swimming pools and it's straight out of a Richie Rich movie where you see those very snooty aristocratic people, living in these very, very expensive environments and school systems that you'd see. This was on acres and acres and acres of land that they were out there on. I mean, yes, Brighton High School was cool, but they didn't have an orchard. We didn't have our own eggs that were, free range grown on campus there, and so it was sort of quite the experience. And I remember, the first thing I remember is that it was time to shower. And so I went to the shower, and it was sort of like your high school shower, but as an inner city kid, we didn't shower at school. Everybody would go home and shower when they got home. And so, when it was time to shower, I remember going into a normal shower, group shower situation, and I waited, make sure nobody was around, and then I got in there, and then I actually, so I was taking my shower in there, and I was trying to quickly take my shower, and I had my eyes closed, and I was soaping, washing my hair, and then I start hearing noises, voices, and I'm like, what the fuck? So then I open my eyes, and there are all these other guys there, they're showering, and I'm like, that's the first time I'm around a bunch of naked guys, and it was sort of weird, like, y'all just fucking shower with each other like that? That's so freaking weird. But, that was normal for them. But it was strange, just like, different cultures, you even within the state of Massachusetts, even you can see within different socioeconomic people with different resources acting very different. And so, anyway, it was an opportunity to meet. Apparently, a lot of the other kids had flown from other states and came to that college campus. It wasn't college; it was high school campus, and that's where we engaged with each other. And I met. It wasn't everyone, but it was a fairly decent amount of students that came from, I guess, the surrounding state, New England states, that came to that particular school to meet, and then we would fly out from Boston to our various locations across the world. And so my scholarship was to England and Scotland, and so I met a couple of kids before we left town, and then I met a kid named Carl, and I can't remember the other kid, Ben and no, it was Carl, and there's another kid, Ben, and I can't remember the rest right now. It'll come back to me. And so we ended up in London. And again, all the kids were still together. I don't know why we were still together, but London was a hub at that point, and this was the last time that we were going to be together before we all dispersed the different countries. And we were already, I was scheduled to, everyone was going to live with a family in that particular country, so that they can experience what it was like to live in that country with that family. And I remember the first thing that was interesting was we were in downtown London somewhere at someone's home. And we were told it's a millionaire's house home that we're at. And this house was worth millions of dollars. And what was really interesting back then, it's interesting how kids see the world differently. But to us, yes, that house may have cost millions of dollars, but it wasn't a big house at all. It seemed like a reasonably small house and I was wondering, I'm like, there's certainly a lot bigger houses in the United States than there. I remember that guy's house cost $2 million at the time. This is going back, 30 plus years ago, 35 years ago. I was thinking, well, I'm just not impressed by how much money this guy spent for this house, and it just seemed like the space is so much smaller than what we had, even back in the United States, when I would consider what a big house would look like. It's one of those things that's very interesting about living in the United States. Is later on, years later, when I would travel, it would be very interesting how smaller things were. Like the elevators in Spain, when I was in Spain years later, were so much smaller. It's almost like you can only get a couple of people in the elevator with your luggage, versus here in the United States, where I guess we're just bigger, so we take up more space. Maybe that's part of it. But Americans just like bigger things. And so I remember afterwards so I think we had brunch at that the $2 million house. And then we actually stayed at this hotel in the middle of downtown London. And I had steak and kidney pie. Oh my God, I was hooked on fish and chips and steak and kidney pie. I was eating fish and chips and steak and kidney pie every chance I got. And at that point, I was working out. I was hooked on working out. And during the daytime, you could just go off in London and just do whatever you wanted to do. And so I'd find a gym to work out. And I found this one gym, and the barbell were these round barbells, like that. Almost feel like you're going back to the 1800s. It was these round balls with a piece of steel, another round ball. I felt like I was going back 100 years in the past at that time. I guess, didn't seem like, not fitness, but lifting weights was as popular there as it was in the United States at the time. It was just, maybe it was, but didn't seem that way based on the gyms that I was visiting. Oh, by the way, let me back up a little bit. Something interesting. So at the time that we were going to London, they were constantly bombing Heathrow Airport. It was terrorism going on back then. It seems like London was always getting bombed by something. And it was actually right after Chernobyl, the explosion, the nuclear explosion. And I remembered that they had to slaughter a whole bunch of cows and livestock, basically, at the time, because they were concerned that that the animals were contaminated. And so when you would go to like a burger joint, like if it was something similar to like a McDonald's, in there was no beef. So we were eating lamb burgers instead of hamburgers, because they had slaughtered all the livestock, as far as the cows were concerned. And I think chickens also. I don't remember about the chicken, but I do remember distinctly about them killing off a series of cows because of that concern. And I also remember, because of the terrorism, they had us fill in these postcards while we were in the United States. Sorry, guys. And had us mail it to our parents the minute we got to London, to say that we were okay and we were safe, even though no one knew if we were going to be fully okay. But the minute we landed on the soil, that's something that they did, because they wanted to make sure. They didn't want our parents to be worried about whether or not we made it through safely or not. And I thought it was a very responsible thing to do. So and this was so strange, by the way, because you have to keep in mind that here's my poor little mom. She's out working, 3 jobs, and she's trying to just get, take care of us. And here's her kid that has this thing to go overseas. And, I don't know that my mom really knew what to do with that at all. And so I felt like she was busy just trying to work, and so I had to actually figure out everything myself. I had to, got some guidance from the people from Experimenting International, living in the student leadership body, and just had to make my way. It was sort of a very interesting scenario. And then I remember that when we were in London, they were actually attacking Americans. The British people were attacking Americans. I can't remember why, but some Americans that got attacked, and they told us that we need to stay together. And if we're going to travel, make sure we're traveling in a group, or at least 2 of us traveling together to make sure that that we don't get attacked. And it was actually, I even remember who was boxing at the time. I think Tim Witherspoon was an American guy that was going to box some British guy at the time. And so that was, whatever that was, I'll look that up, was at the time that we were there. And I remember because they said that Americans were getting attacked, we were traveling in 2s and 3s. And I remember that Carl was missing. And so we spent the whole time searching for him all over the place, and we could not find him. And we were kind of getting into a little bit of trouble at the time there. And so it got to a point that our chaperone said to us that, look, if we got into any more trouble while we're in London before we leave off to our various location, they're going to send us all back to the United States. And so we're all worried about it. And so we decided, well, let's not get into any trouble. Let's look out for each other. And so that's what we did. And so one night we got home, and it was reasonably late. And we're doing a body count, just checking to see if everyone was there. And Carl was missing. And so we looked everywhere. We couldn't find Carl anywhere. We looked at, throughout the whole hotel. We went out walking outside trying to find him, and we were worried that Carl got attacked. And we're like, and if he really got attacked, then we're going to get sent home, and our parents are going to be ashamed of us, and our school is going to be embarrassed. And so we spent maybe 2-3 hours looking for Carl, and we could not find him. And so finally, somebody says, well, have you checked his room? And so we went and we tried to open the door, and the door was locked. And these guys, they were always out drinking. Him and his buddy, they're going to the bar and getting drunk. And so we thought, well, I wonder if he's just drunk and passed out in his room. Because that's the thing about London, even at our age, you could go up to the front counter and order a pint of beer. So these guys were having a field day with it, and they were getting drunk. And so we looked at it, and they said, well, somebody's going to have to get into this room. Otherwise, we're going to all get sent back home to the United States. And so they're like, we need a volunteer. And I think somehow I got picked. And the mission, like Mission Impossible, was that somebody need to go out to the ledge. Okay, we're probably about 7 to 8 floors up off the ground. And somebody was supposed to go out on the ledge. The ledges are, I don't know, maybe a foot, maybe a couple of feet at most. I don't think the ledges were that big. I think it felt like maybe, 12 to 18 inches, something like that. That's out on the ledge like you see in every movie. And one of us would have to go out there, walk along the ledge outside, and then enter the room, Carl's room, and then open the door and to see if he was in there. And so here I am out on the ledge, late at night, in the middle of London, out on a ledge. If my mother had seen me, she would have had a heart attack. And so that's what I'm out there doing. I'm doing Mission Impossible, and I'm going along the ledge, and then I got to the window, and the window was open. I slid it up further, and back in those days versus now, I know a lot of hotels don't have windows that you can just open and jump, and enter from the outside. But back then in London, they did. And so I opened the window, and I looked, and I could see Carl laying in his bed sleeping. And I was sort of pissed about it. Like, this dude has just been laying here the whole time, and we've been out for hours and hours looking for him. And so what I did, I'm like, okay, I'm going to prank him. So I actually jumped from the window ledge at the entrance of the window onto the bed, and I went, "Wake up!" And when I said that, I heard a woman's voice says, "Who's that?" And I was literally over her, a little white girl, and I was basically on all fours over her. And to this day, it's the strangest thing I have ever experienced. She didn't scream. She didn't seem nervous. She hardly felt startled. And she just says, "What are you doing in here?" And I said, "Oh, wrong room. I am so sorry." And she's like, "Okay." And she just opened the door and let me out. Can you imagine if that happened to you? You'd be freaking out in this day, somebody would be trying to shoot you, kill you, call the cops, the whole 9 yards. But that girl deserved I'm like, was she so dead drunk asleep? Was she on drugs? I don't understand how somebody could be so calm under circumstance, but she was. And so, anyway, found out it was the wrong room, so of course I had to go back out and go back around again, and then I went to the other room, and so I went to the room, and he was not there. But when he finally showed up, and we're like, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you, Carl. It's so good to see you." And he, I said, "Where the hell have you been?" And he was like, he didn't give a shit. It was like, whatever, like, why y'all getting all worked up about it? It doesn't matter. He just didn't care, and it really pissed us off that he just didn't care, and he put us through all the stress. And so we decided we're going to teach Carl a lesson. And so one day when him and the other kid, his drinking buddy, went off, we actually got into his room, and we got buckets and buckets of those trash cans. We filled them up with water, and when I say we poured water into that mattress, it was like a swimming pool. And then we gently pulled the covers back up and put the pillow there. And then we waited till he came in. We're like, "Is he here?" We're like, "Yeah." And then all of a sudden, we're listening when he went into his room. We're listening. All of a sudden, we hear, splash. And then he's like, "Oh!" And then we all look at each other. We laughed and we ran away. So that was us getting back, getting even, because he was being an asshole in that case. He didn't really care. And so then one of the days I was out, I was always finding a gym somewhere. Nothing changes. I was always finding a gym somewhere. And one day, eating all that steak and kidney pie and fish and chips, I started to put on a little bit of weight. I mean, I had a hard time gaining weight growing up. And so being in England, eating the steak and kidney pie and fish and chip, I started, for whatever reason, with my fast metabolism, it started to work for me, and I started putting on a little bit more muscle. I actually started looking even bigger. So, I think I got from 148 to probably about 165, which I'm not a tall guy. I'm 5'6", so 165 in high school, really pretty shredded. It's a pretty decent amount of weight for a guy. And so I got home, and all the guys stopped me at the door, and they stopped me and they go, "Bruce, promise me you won't kill Ben." And I go, "What?" They go, "Promise me you won't kill Ben." And I go, "Why would I kill Ben? Ben's a nice kid." Ben was, I was kind of like the oldest kid of all of those kids. And I was about 17, probably almost turning 18, because remember, for those of you who've been watching the series, I had to stay back 3 times in the 8th grade. So I was pushing almost 18 years old at that time. And so they're saying, "Promise me you won't kill Ben." And I'm like, "Why would I kill Ben?" what did he do? And they're like, it doesn't matter. You need to promise us first that you're not going to kill Ben. And I go, okay, fine. I will not kill Ben. They're like, I promise. Okay, I promise I'm not going to kill Ben. So then they said, well, Ben got drunk and threw up in your suitcase on all your clothes. And I was like, what? All my brand new clothes that I bought to come on my trip, that we were still in London. I haven't traveled to the other, to meet the family that I'm supposed to be staying with. He threw up on everything. And then I went in there and I opened it, and there's nothing that stinks more and more repulsive than alcohol vomit. It's just disgusting. It smells awful. And so I was like, oh. And then Ben is crying. He's going, oh, I'm so sorry, Bruce. I'll do the laundry. I'll pay for the laundry. My parents will buy you new clothes. And, he ended up laundering the clothes, and it was fine, But it was so funny about that. And, I'm like, well, you have to promise to stop drinking, because he was the youngest of all of us. And he just, he was in England, and he was getting free alcohol, and he was trying to fit in, and just bad deal. He shouldn't have been doing that. The next thing that happened is that one night these guys went out to watch the boxing match, the one with Tim Witherspoon. I guess they're gonna watch it on TV somewhere in a bar somewhere, and I didn't go with them. And so these two kids, the two, Carl and the other kid, they went out there, and they came back from watching the thing, and the other kid got his arm broken. And so it was, so now they're getting attacked. I remember I told you that Americans were getting attacked. So I was thinking, I'm like, what happened? They said, oh, these guys, we're talking about the American boxer, Tim Witherspoon, beating the British boxer, and they got really pissed off. The way the Brits are, they take their sports pretty damn seriously. So having a bunch of Americans go over there and start talking shit in a bar is going to piss off the locals, which is what they did. And so I guess they got in a barroom brawl, or these guys followed them afterwards and beat the shit out of, of one of them. And I said, how come you don't have any scratches on you, Carl? And he's all fucked up. And he says, well, when he started getting attacked, I ran up on the bridge so I can get a better view. So I'm like, you didn't help him out? He's like, no, I went up on the bridge, I could see everything. I'm like, if that was me and you're watching my ass getting kicked and you didn't do anything about it, I'd be totally kicking your ass afterwards. So that was that. Then afterwards, what happened is we had to go off to spend time at the different places with the different family members. So I'll tell you about that in our next episode. Again, don't forget, my name is Bruce Wayne, and I have lots of workout videos. A very, very long time ago, I said that if you had a story of your own, a short story, you should send me, send me a letter, a short letter, tell me your story a little bit, and I'll read it on the air. So I'm encouraging you to do that. And as usual, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to download my Easy Weight Loss app, and don't forget to like my channel. My name is Bruce Wayne, and thank you so much for watching.